Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome to yet another Cornell keynote. I'm your host, Lutz. I'm faculty here at Cornell, where I teach courses on AI, data, product strategy, and so on. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to help executives, business leaders on how AI becomes applicable in products, in markets, and how it does change behavior and us as a society. In my own work, I focus mostly on large language models. I build two companies around that. I built Fish Analytics. It's a social media area tool. And recently, I sold my fine-tuned large language model company, R to Decide. It's for e-commerce, essentially helping you with GEO, SEO, and other things. I as well teach at Cornell. I have one course, which is an open course for everybody to enroll, where I replace myself with a fake Lutz, so like somebody who speaks like me, and teach a course. I do first 100 hours live, and I teach you how to replicate yourself. I as well do AI workshops, workflows, all the rage. So we talk about harnesses and so on and so forth. But today it's a slightly different topic. Today it's a topic about education. And in my own classes, I'm faced with this. Like, how much do we use ChatGPT, Gemini, and OpenAI, right? Should students use it? My answer is absolutely, but I do teach AI, so go figure, right? But how does it change? How does education change? What does it mean? Like, how do we work with AI and creativity? All of those are difficult questions because AI is changing how we learn. AI is changing how we engage with systems, computers, and so on. So there is no better person to talk to as somebody who sits actually in the epicenter of it all. So I'm very, very pleased that today I will be talking to Maureen Heymans. She is VP of Engineering for Learning at Google. Maureen is one of the ones who actually drive forward how education gets used. And she has done this across many different, we call them surfaces, many different touch points. Search, all of you know that. YouTube, all of you know that. But as well, Classroom. Google is big in Classroom. Gemini, you have heard about this, and NotebookLM. If you haven't tried this out, it is probably the best moment now to actually get going and log in there and try it. Because it all comes down to personalization, tutoring, enabling every student and every teacher. So Maureen is over 19 years, like 19 years at Google. She joined Google in 2003 and has done quite a lot in terms of cross-language search, social search, personal search, all of the good stuff, the real tough problems to solve. She is originally from Belgium, and a big shout out to her. She is with us now here and not with her soccer team, which is playing right now. And I'm so sorry. I did not know, Maureen, as I set this up, that the Belgians are playing now. We wish them all the best, and thank you so much for taking time. She holds a master's in computer science, so she knows what she's talking. And actually, one of her research projects was applied graph theory. We should talk a little bit about how graph theory and LLMs works together. I have my opinion, but I'm very curious to get yours. So as PageRank came around, which made Google what Google has, she was perfectly positioned to join. And from there on, it's history. And she built it all up, and now she's in the educational part. So Maureen, with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much also for the introduction.
Now, and again, thank you for being here despite the team playing. Now, we normally start the show with a little bit background. So tell us a little bit about who is Maureen, 19 years in search. And as the audience know, I used to be in healthcare on Google Health side, and we did a little bit search, but 19 years in search, starting with ranking, that's a pretty long time. How did you get over to education?
I mean, first, I feel like education and learning has been always so core to Google mission. So I always felt like during my 23 years at Google, I always worked on learning. And but I would say that I guess 4 or 5 years ago now, during the pandemic, like many other parents, I got more exposed to my kids' education. And we actually even decided to do a little experiment. They were like fourth grade and sixth grade, so not much to lose. And we heard about this startup called Prisma, who was completely new and was doing project-based learning. And so I was like, oh, that sounds super interesting. Let us move them for a few months, and then we can decide what we do next. And because it was a startup, they were really excited to get parents' engagement. And so I really got a chance to see how you can really evolve education when you make it much more hands-on, much more, interactive, really connecting what students were learning to actually real world problems and interleaving all the different subjects. And so that really got me excited to work on education. And luckily, we had a team that was formed to focus on education, to work across all of our products. We already have a lot of students coming to us. Um, with their learning needs, right? Like as you say, whether this is search or YouTube or Google Classroom. And so our team is really looking at how we can evolve, and especially using AI, how we can really transform how people learn and make it more engaging, make it more personal, make it much more interactive. And so that's how I decided to join, because I thought that was a really exciting mission. And definitely as a parent, I saw it close how you can really spark curiosity if you evolve how people learn.
This is fascinating. Yes, because the you cannot overstate how big the shift is. As so the course where I replaced myself with an AI agent, the course is now 2.5 years old. It's constantly updated because I have this AI agent, which I kind of like just update. But early on, this has created so many um, questions within the school, like how will teaching be looking like? What is the role of a teacher? What's the role of creativity? Now, um, you guys at Google have actually launched something pretty amazing, and this is very recent, so this is new, and it comes from your team, which is well, like your team has built it. It's around Study Notebook. Tell us a little bit, what is the Study Notebook from Gemini, and what's the idea behind it?
Yes. I mean, so as part of a journey, right, we talk to a lot of students and we try to understand the different needs, what's the pain points, where they could get more support, and really see where Google could provide unique value. And so one of the big user journey is to practice, right? Whether you're practicing, trying to understand and bring your knowledge to the next level by practicing and preparing for a test. And so we launched in Gemini what's called study notebooks. And so the idea of study notebooks, it's really to provide you a personalized support to help you prepare and practice for your upcoming tests, whether this is a big test like ACT or in India, JEE, but also prepare just for your upcoming chapter test or your final test. And so what it does is that you can you can either upload your own content, or you can say which standardized tests you are preparing for. And so it will give you a diagnosis test and to try to understand where you are, because we know that learning is so much better when it's personalized and adaptive. And so based on that test, we can understand what's your strengths, what you already know that we can build on top of, or activate that prior knowledge, but also really understand where you might have gaps, where you might have misconception, understanding the root cause of those misconceptions. Maybe it's prerequisites. And then based on that, we'll provide you with adaptive um, remediation or like supports, whether this is lessons that are adapted to the areas where you need to improve, or whether this is flashcards or more practice. And the idea is that it's not just in one single session. You can keep coming back to it. You can, because we know a lot of those tests takes more than just a day, and so we want students to take that habits of like practicing, and especially if they can do it over time, then you encourage spaced repetition. You really try to build up on top of their knowledge and identify the gaps. And so this is something we just launched. It's just the beginning. We are expanding it to more standardized tests, bringing it to mobile, bringing it to more countries, but really excited about this opportunity to provide for free the ability for students to practice and to learn in a personalized way.
Awesome. Now, before I hit you with a couple of questions, you saw early on this like pop-up thing saying questions to everybody in the audience who is new. Like some people like are here because they have seen former shows. This is interactive. You can type below your question. If you put in your name, I will call it out. If you don't put in your name, I just won't. Don't know, can't do, right? But you can ask anything you want. We will, I won't be able to get to every question and we will be selective. However, I won't do this at the end. I will bring your questions in as we go. So let me participate and you will have more fun as usual. Maureen, I have one question for this. Like, so now we have now a study book. This is awesome. So we help students to digest information better so that they can replicate it easier, right? So it's a training method and it's awesome because it's personalized. I get this. Now, two questions. Will the future even require this? If I can ask ChatGPT and Gemini anyhow any question, why do I need to learn it? And how do you think about the complexity if you start training students to replicate knowledge?
I think it's a great question. I mean, I think first, of course, learning will need to evolve, right? We need to make sure that students can leverage existing tools. But I do feel that there is foundation that everybody has to build. And so I think it's still important for students to build some key foundation in terms of numeracy, in terms of math, that they can really build the skills on top of, right? I mean, even in terms of a brain development, I think it's important for students to develop those skills of being able to write, to be able to look for information, I think this is critical. And, I always take the example of language learning, right? I came to the US 25 years ago and my kids keep asking, Mom, how long have you been here? And I keep telling them, I will never lose my accent. And there is like a lot of studies that shows that, if you don't learn a language before you are 14, then you will always have an accent. And so I think, there's clearly some fundamental that whatever tools exist, students have to develop because that's part of the brain development. No, I do feel that, now that, the same when Google was launched, right? Like people were like, oh, the library is going to disappear. It's just like we have to evolve, not that you have access to this information, it's close to your hands. And definitely we need to evolve what people learns, right? What are the durable skills? How can we prepare students for the future? And I think I think it's really important to evolve how students learn so that they can really grow the durable skills, right?
Yes.
Including creativity, communication, collaboration, and communication. All of those are so important. They also need to learn to have agency on the learning, right? To be in charge of how they learn. They also need to be flexible and agile and have a growth mindset in the world of AI. I think everybody, is wondering what's going to be the future of jobs, especially for entry level. And so I think there is a lot of skills we need to nurture.
This is amazing. This is like let's hone in on this. There's a lot of skills because um you have a beautiful accent, by the way, Maureen, and the French sounding accent is definitely better than the German sounding accent. Trust me, and I have no chance to lose mine. So it's but I know what you're talking about. But because we both have grown up in Europe, we also know how different educational systems can be. And there's a variety, like there's a strong, like everything is a Gaussian curve in this world. So there's a Gaussian curve how people learn, right, based on the different countries. So the ability to adjust to a person's learning style is extremely helpful. Um, I get that. but what are the skills you would see which is important? I can tell you what I do with my students. So for example, for me, like one of the things I'm trying to learn is to show my students where the models like Gemini get it wrong. And because my assumption is all my students will use um, an LLM to answer the questions. So I need to frame the questions in a way so that they actually get it wrong. A simple one is how many um, apples can President Lula from Brazil count on both hands? If you just ask this to a chatbot, it would say 10. In reality, it's 9 because he only has 9 fingers. Or like another one is I have this coffee machine behind me. It has data sets of every espresso. I ask people to build, a deep learning model with that in order to predict qualities of the coffee, which doesn't really make sense because you don't actually know whether I like the coffee or not. Those are the things where I'm trying to get students off. Now, from your point of view, if you think as Google, what are the skills or the important parts you actually see out there, and you think like this is stuff our students need to learn, and for that we give them the tools?
Yeah, I mean, as we just discussed, I think critical thinking, for example, is one that you just mentioned that I think is going to be super important. It's a world where everybody's overflowed with information, and like information generating information, it's even easier than before. And so I think we really need to help students developing the skill to be able to analyze the information, to be able to evaluate different perspective, and really form their own informed judgment, right? We need to make sure that they can build they can inquire, they can be curious, they can be empowered to ask questions and explore and all of that. So I think for me, that's probably one of the most important skills that has always been important, but probably even more in a world of AI where information is so free, and especially to be able to build that view of like getting multiple perspective, right? Nothing is never black and white. And so I think if you can hear multiple perspective, I think it's going to help you make much better informed decision. And so I think that's something that we need to keep teaching our students. I mean, I do that with my kids when they say, Mom, I know this fact. I'm like, where did you read it? On Google. I'm like, okay, good first starting point, but where? And then, like in the AI mode or AI overview. And I'm like, but did you check the source? Did you and of course, working at Google, I know how much we are doing to make sure that those sources as authoritative as possible. But I want them to build the skill set of like understanding what's a good website, what's a good source of information for health related topics, of science, for and really make sure that they can have that point of view.
This is actually an awesome segue to one of the questions. Like, by the way, like education hits a nerve. Like, we have a full house today, and we already have now quite a nice list of questions. We didn't even start, guys. Calm down. Now, keep them coming. Keep them coming. This is awesome. So, Brett, thanks, Brett, for your question. I'm concerned about how tech firms control the source of truth, meaning supporting educators, librarians, and journalists. Like, what's your view on it? Like, and you said it, we check, but um, on the other hand, we said, like you explained how the study notebook works, that I bring my own content. Now, if I bring my own content, I tried one thing with Gemini a while back. I uploaded my own content claiming that I'm Captain America. I made a lot of fuss about it, like the whole history of Captain America. Lutz Finger is Captain America. And then I asked Gemini whether I'm Captain America. And Gemini kind of said, no, you're Littlefinger. You're trying to pretend to be Captain America. Damn it. Who allows Gemini to actually say that? If I want to be Captain America, I think I can be Captain America. No, but tell me, how do you go with a multiple true level of truth?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really built on years of what Google has been doing, right? In terms of ranking, it's all about building the right signals to understand what's authoritative, what's is high quality, what's trustable, and use that as part of a ranking. algorithms. And so I think the same technology is being used, it's being leveraged for our AI models. AI models are built on the web, but we have a lot of signals to understand what to trust. We also do a lot of partnership and licensing with organization to be able to bring that authoritative information. And so to really, I mean, everything you see on search is really grounded on the web and on those response. And then in addition, we really want to give credit back to those sources. And so that's why you see, whether this is in search or Gemini, you see links back to those sources, so that not only you can dive deeper and go on those sites, but you can also see where it's coming from and form your own judgment on that front as well. So I think, I would say that at Google we have the benefit of that's just been the secret sauce, like the foundation of everything we have done, and so we've been leveraging that. And but it's constant work, right, of evaluation, red teaming. We do a lot. I mean, evaluation is also the goal of Google, but also of AI, of making sure that we continue improving on the accuracy and factuality. And so that's also something we continuously do, especially for sensitive topics. And we have red teaming team and all of that. So I think that's really what I would say has been most important for us, to make sure that we provide accurate information and link back to those authoritative.
Yes. Now, to like I have seen this in healthcare as the same problem, right? There are so many different truths about like take alone how much protein a person should take, or as we had COVID, all the discussion about what stops COVID, what doesn't stop COVID. Um, it's complicated to filter this out, and therefore I think it's very nice how you describe this. Because there's one question which I see in the ether floating. If you look at Reddit and other or LinkedIn and other chat groups, very often there's a question of whether the aggregator position, which Gemini has or OpenAI tries to reach, right? Meaning they are becoming the aggregator and therefore the controller of truth, which is probably a point which Brett alluded to. Um, None of those aggregator actually has an interest in it because there are too many variations in it. What they have in like the focus on, as you said, select the right sources, select sources that are mentioned or are like used to discuss. And you can test it out by actually asking your favorite model complicated political questions and see how the reactions is. And because all models try to strike a balance. But since this is never black and white, it's very hard to strike this balance.
Exactly.
So I very much like the point. Now I have one other question on the adaptive form. So Angela kind of like wrote like ask about study notebooks, and it's like and I think it plays right into the vision you guys have having. It's like how for children with dyslexia and learning disabilities, how do those systems adapt? And I think that's a huge power AI can actually bring.
Yeah, no, I mean, we of course spend a lot of time with teachers and educators, and what we keep hearing is that AI can open up so many opportunity for neurodivergent kids and kids with disabilities, because now you can bring learnings in multiple formats. We had this National Teacher of the Day event that we hosted at Google, and we saw this teacher, like a music teacher, that actually used vibe coding to build some tools to enable the kids with disabilities to create music, and that was really powerful. And so I think for me, like if we really look at the high level, how we can really transform learning, it's to make it much more interactive, hands-on, but really much more personal, adaptive to your context, to your interest, to your proficiency, but also to all those like disabilities and all the difference that like make like learning really unique to every learner. So I think that's a big opportunity and something we are definitely partnering with many educators and exploring what can be done.
Like one notion you brought in several times now when you're saying like where do you want like one notion is obviously the personalization of the learning experience, but the other notion you mentioned is the level of creativity. And as many of my audience know, I write on Forbes, and I had this one article that I wrote together with one of my students about how creativity can be supported, but since models are average, life is like a box of chocolate. Why should that be, right? It's like box of surprises, box of love. No chocolate because that's what Forrest Gump said. So creativity is suppressed by the averaging of a model. So you have done a lot of work there, and you in one of the interviews you gave, you talked about a design thinking class. Tell us a little bit about it because I think that's so crucial to the way how we deal with AI.
Yeah, no, and I want to say that I do see AI as a co-creation engine. It's not, it can really help you, but it can really help remove technical barriers. But yes, we, like as I mentioned, we visit a lot of schools, and one of them I visited recently was a school in Redwood City called Design Tech School, and they had like this design class, and they were really, it was an exciting class because they're really going through the full like design process of like understanding your user, the pain points, brainstorming about ideas and solution, and then prototyping, and then getting feedback and all of that. And so I was asking the teacher, how have you been incorporating AI or not in this course, right? And the answer for me really resonated because it was all about sequencing. It's not about, hey, let's use AI for everything. It's about introducing it at the right time so that it can really be used as an enhancement versus a replacement. And so, for example, at the beginning, she really wanted first this to be a collaborative process. So she asked the kids, close all your laptop and just use sticky notes and start brainstorming. And so that's what they did. It was like a great discussion, brainstorm, all of that. Then you could go to AI to get feedback and say, hey, what do you think of those ideas? Is there something else we could do? So you kind of enhance your, it's a brainstorming partner, but that enhance what you've already been brainstorming. And then after that, she actually wanted the kids to also build use the hands to build some prototypes. So she also said, hey, let's use cardboards, let's build some prototype. As kids got more into also want to build a website, an app, that's where, of course, she encouraged them to use vibe coding because that meant really didn't remove all the technical barriers that you didn't need to know how to code, right? Or to build like a website. So she encouraged them to do it. Then when you get into feedback, again, AI is a great moment, it's a great tool to get feedback, right? To kind of continue evolving your thinking. But again, I think it was really what was key was the sequencing of making sure you don't dedicate everything to AI. You first write down your ideas, you do your own thought process, and then you get feedback. And also it removes some technical barriers because you didn't know how to code, you didn't know how to do some stuff, and now it's really there as a partner to help you through that creation process.
Totally. And I think this is very nicely said. The it's a tool, and as of a tool, it doesn't mean it takes creativity away. Otherwise, life is like a box of chocolate, like everybody says so, right? And that's not very helpful. The way I often compare it to is if we compare it to the 1930s as photography came around, right? Like we could paint pictures and now we make a photo. It doesn't mean that art died. It meant that you could now with a camera actually create new art that you couldn't have done before. And yes, that camera is a very clear reflection of the whatever object you're taking a photo of, but you still selected it, you still set it up in the right system, you kind of put it in the right context. And I think we will see the same thing. I could ask every question I have to you, Maureen, in as a poem, but that would be pretty dull. Why should I, right? I mean, so it is more how do we use AI to hit a nerve, excite something? And there, Dennis actually asked a nice question for recommendations for high school teachers using AI assist in writing essays, but not like trusting that the AI writes the whole thing in itself. Like from my point of view, I mean, I have this all the time. Um, Now, since I train in an AI class, I actually ask my students to write an agent to give grades to all the other students in the class. So then we have all the mini teachers who grade everybody. And then we allow, like, my main focus is, have they written the code correctly? Does this grading actually work? How much distribution do I have in grading? Do I see a bias? All of the good jazz. Therefore, I actually have a way. But like, if you are an English teacher, Maureen, how do you do this? What should be your lever here?
It's a good question. I think it's going to be about sequencing and introducing the tool at the right time, but also providing the right guidelines to students, right? Because I think, including my kids, they're sometimes a little lost on when they can use and shouldn't use AI. And but you definitely like, you can use whether this is AI or the search engine to do the research when it comes to writing. I think so is something we've encouraged to doing, to get information, gather information, to get multiple perspective. I think we should encourage then students to first write the first thought on their own, right? Write the first draft, right? Um, and so that you do that thought exercise and you don't get too influenced by what the AI might do. Then you can also use AI to get feedback, to kind of enhance that writing. And but then of course, I think it's also a good exercise can be to critique the output of the AI. I think that that's something I heard uh, at some event from, I think, from one of the teachers that was actually asking students to ask AI to write the essay, but then critique it and then see how you can enhance it. So I think there's a lot of ways you can introduce AI so that students can build that AI literacy skills, know what's the pitfalls, what to watch out for, how you can use it, but at the same time, don't offload all the process to AI and really introduce it at the right time to get the feedback and to bring your work to the next level. So I
Yeah.
think the opportunities are really big. But I also feel like one thing I really want to say that, in all of this, the teacher should be the architect of the transformation, not the tools. And
Yes.
the tools should be in service of the teachers. So, of course, teachers should experiment with those tools, also learn them, but I think they should also decide, and of course, at Google, we have a lot of, we just launched this educator series to help teachers build that expertise. But I think teachers are best placed to decide how to incorporate those tools in the classroom.
Yeah. And Dennis, from my side, I think you are looking not necessarily for writing skills anymore, because writing skills can be done. You're looking for creativity. Before that, it was a mix. It was like, yeah, you should be able to write, and well, you still can test writing, obviously, and saying, well, write in class and don't use a tool, because like it's like calculations in your head. You should be able to use a calculator, and you should be able to do at least 7 times 8, right? But here is like, in essays, you're looking for the creativity. One of the example, think about the iPod. As Apple came out with the iPod, it was Steve Jobs had the idea of 1,000 songs in your pocket. If you would have created a Gemini or OpenAI or ChatGPT, whatever you want to call the thing, which got trained on all the models out there, and saying, now suggest a good model to me. At that time in the market, music players were clunky, colorful, had a mini display and many, many buttons, because they looked like a cheaper version of a BlackBerry, they're like keyboard. And they were measured by battery life, how much storage they had, how many protocols. They were complicated products. And Steve Jobs says, no, no, I want one button, no display, nothing. It should be small, it should fit into your pocket, and should be 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's it. No LLM would have come up with this idea. That was creativity from Steve Jobs in this case. And what we need to teach is how students get to this creativity.
Yes. And
Now,
maybe I wanted to, if it's okay, to add another little example on the creativity side, which is a one that I've been experiencing at home, right? At how much you can remove technical barriers. But my son started like this little honey business where he's selling honey that from a beehives. and he's been, putting the honey jar on a little farm stand outside of the a house, and he's made good money out of it. I was kind of impressed. But then some people started stealing, right? That's life. That's part of learning. And so he decided to build a vending machine. I was like, okay, that's a pretty big project. And so, but then he started really using AI to figure out how to build it, what materials, what hardware he had to buy. He sent me a list. It was like, how did you figure that? Oh, I just talked to Gemini, ChatGPT, and then got some ideas. And then part of this was also having a Raspberry Pi, but he doesn't know how to do coding and Python coding. And so again, that's how he used AI. And he's been making great progress, and he learned along the way. And I asked him, hey, do you feel like you've been offloading too much to the AI because you don't write the code? And he's like, no, first I'm debugging, I'm looking, I'm learning. But I think most importantly, I would have never done this project if it was not for AI. And so I think for me, those are great examples of like how AI is removing the technical barriers to really push creativity to the next level, and really democratizing in some sense creativity, because now you don't need to have studied computer science, you don't need to have those skills, or to know how to build like a website or be a great UX designer. You can really use AI as a partner that helps you along the way. And so I think that's what I'm really excited to see. And similarly for teacher, as I mentioned, we have seen teacher building amazing tools that I know they know best what will be most useful for their students. And so I think I'm really excited to see all those creation we are going to see across the world.
Now, we offloaded now quite a mouthful over to the teachers, right? We said like new tools. Yeah, you don't need to write anymore. Like use the tools. We make it adaptive and get us to a more, how do you say, adaptive learning style. And creativity is a new thing. Now, in one of the discussions you had, you are very much focused on how can we build tools, structures to make the teacher this architect of the future learning journey. And I love this word, like being the architect of this learning journey. Very much the opposite of I give you a book and I make sure that you memorize everything out of this book. But in one of the articles, you talk about that it took also people who are close to you a while to come around. Are we not like talk a little bit about it, and like are we asking for too much?
I mean, I think it's so. First, a little bit of background. My brother is a teacher. He's a teacher in Belgium in classes that I call bridge classes, because they welcome immigrant kids, many refugee kids who come from a different school system, but also don't necessarily speak the local language. And so it kind of helps them. He spent a few times with them to help them find the footing, and then so they can re-enter the standard class. And so yes, of course, working on education, I asked him, like, just a few months after ChatGPT came out, I asked him, how have you been using it? I was like, oh, I don't know, I haven't really done it. But I don't think it was so much like a rejection, more that I'm busy and I haven't had time to really dig into those tools. And so I think, and now actually, now that he has more time, he's asking me questions. He's like, where to find training. He's like, oh, I want to create comics. Comics are big in Belgium. It's like, oh, it would be cool to make learning more visuals. And so I was playing with him on what he could do. But again, I feel like first we know that teachers are pretty overloaded, right? Teacher like spend more than 50 hours per week, and there is a lot of burnout, and in addition we're in shortage. And so now I think we are asking them, and students have been really quick at adopting those tools, and we are asking them at the same time that they're overloaded to adopt those new tools and to transform the class. And I think that's definitely a lot. And so that's why at Google we really try to put a lot of emphasis on supporting teachers in that process, starting with providing the education on how to use tools to help connect them, this amazing community of teachers, so that they can learn from other teachers how they've been using AI, what's been successful, what to watch out for. And so, but I think for me it's really, making it easy for teacher to learn about what you can do with AI, and support them in that journey. And of course AI, I mean, we all know, I mean, this the quick win of, like, we have studies showing this, well, it's like saves teacher 10 hours per week just to remove repetitive tasks. And so that's great. That's already 10 hours that you can now save to spend more time with students, and to really, be the critical player in the human connection. But I think beyond that saving, I think we really need to support teachers in that journey as well, and help them figure out what's the best way to transform education in the classroom.
This is an awesome segue, actually. So, Azadeh actually asked two questions, which I have on my question list as well. So, let me both bring them up here because Azadeh talks about the long discussion about how much struggle should a student have. Isn't struggle productive? Isn't the frustration productive? And making in like a very adaptive learning journey for a student, isn't that essentially the wrong tool? I think I know your answer to this, but yes, like let's go for that. That's question number one. And once we did this, Azadi has a second one, which also is kind of like, what's your vision for the teacher tools? But let's first start with the struggle.
Yeah, I mean, productive struggle is critical. I mean, all learning science shows that this is the way you learn, right? By trying and failing and trying again. And so we definitely need to make sure that AI doesn't cut that productive struggle. And that's why, tools, we've been bringing a lot of learning science to make sure that we honor that struggle. We've launched this guided learning, which is the Socratic tutor, that instead of giving you the answer too quickly, will ask you a question, will really try to make you think, right? And help you develop also metacognition, so you understand how you got to the answer, so that you can do it on your own next time. So definitely, encouraging that is super important. But I think it's all about a balance too, right? We have to make sure that we remove the non-productive struggle. And to answer your question about whether making it adaptive is removing too much struggle, I will actually argue this is a place where, we can really remove the unproductive struggle, because right now teachers have to teach to average class, right? They have a lot of students in the classroom, and some students are really behind and having struggle, and it's hard for the teacher to bring them the same level. Some students are bored, and that's also not great, because it could be disruptive when they're bored. And so I think adaptive enables you to provide that personalized learning, and make it more productive in general.
Which I think is exactly the core value guys bring, that you tie this out. I can, from my own class, right? So my students don't need to read because, face it, like those students don't read anyhow. I give them normally stuff and they never read it. So instead of forcing them to read, I actually have now my fake Lutz or my virtual Lutz. They have to talk to me before they come to class to the virtual Lutz. So I have a topic and they have to discuss with the virtual Lutz the topic before they come to class. And the virtual Lutz decides whether they're allowed in class or not. It helps to survive the discussion if they read or if they ask Gemini for answers. But then they know it as well, right? Then they have the right mindset. Now, how much struggle I give them before they come to class is for every student the same, because I hard coded it in my prompt, right? And the value Google can bring is that they actually understand how much struggle every students need to have in order to excel, which is extremely exciting. Now,
100%.
second question from Izade was around the bigger opportunity and around is not necessarily on the personalization, but how do you think about scaling up teachers? If you and you talked about your brother, what would be the ideal tools you give to your brother? Let's assume you have unlimited funds to actually make him the best architect of the learnings of his students.
It's a great question. I mean, I think as I mentioned, first we have built like training, right? So that you can learn the basic, you can learn from true examples, you can learn from other teachers what they have been doing. So I think that that's the foundation. I think every teacher might have, again, it's about personalization, might have a different level of confidence or willingness to really dive into those tools. And so I think that's why we need to bring diverse set of tools. You know, if you look at what we have shipped into Google Classroom, we have tools to help, removing a lot of the administrative tasks, right? And help them so that they can also provide personalized feedback. So it goes from lesson planning to helping, do grading aligned to the rubrics. The study notebooks that we just discussed, actually, it's something we're also going to launch in the classroom, where teacher will be able to create those practice with their own content, their own curriculum. And so that's also something that will enable teachers to provide like grounded, personalized support to the students. So I think integrating those tools directly in them in the workflow, so we can help them with the different journey of preparing, of assessing, of is super important. But then of course, like as we saw for some of the teacher from the National Teacher Day, some of them are really eager to start doing vibe coding. And so that's where, kind of really playing with those tools, whether, pick your favorite vibe coding tools, there are many of them. And so start playing with it, right? Just using text. I think that's why I think would be a great way to bring, the opportunities to the next level.
I love the way you kind of describe this in terms of really supporting the teacher to drive to new areas. And by the way, this is the productivity boost or the creativity boost which AI is bringing out. You do not need to buy one book and one book alone to explain it. Like maybe the teacher comes up with a comic, as you said, or like the teacher actually now vibe codes a small app. If you come to my AI workflow like thing from Google from Cornell, small side plug here, then you will see how easy it is actually to build those things. And as a teacher, you then go out and then you kind of make your favorite tool trying to support the students. Kirby actually asked a question to this one. He talked about the Alpha School, and I don't know, Maureen, whether you are. Yes, you are. Okay, so this is not like for live shows. You get questions and you have to bring them up. But so the Alpha School had as an idea to a little bit to replace teachers, and it didn't go well. Um, Now I think there is a good learning for us because there is a huge worry that AI is replacing us all and we won't exist anymore and AI is doing AI and like there's no no humans in the loop anymore. But actually what you described in supercharging teachers is quite the opposite. If you put this a little bit into the context of the Alpha School.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some stuff that Alpha School did that were super interesting. Like, for example, encouraging, development of durable skills like communication and critical thinking. So I think there's some good learnings there. But definitely, I feel like, at the end of the day, school is not just about knowledge. It's about building human connection. It's about building social skills, empathy, collaboration, all of that. And so I think that's where teachers are critical, because if we do save some of the time, they can really put that time into making sure that the classroom is a place where students can build those social skills, right? Where it's like really organized around human interaction. And help with relationship building and also connecting the what they are learning to real world problems. And so I think for me that's why it's very most important is teacher essential. It's not just about quickly learning about fact and getting a great score on ACT. It's about building all those other skills and really building especially the human interaction and the social skills. And I think one thing, from what I know of Alpha School, right, I think they try to separate a little too much like the knowledge learning, like optimizing for standardized tests and all of that, from the durable skills building. From my experience on project-based learning, I'm much a bigger fan of interleaving the two, right? Really, you can build critical thinking as part of your writing class. You can build creativity as part of your math class or your physics class, and by applying some of what you learn to real world problems. You can of course build collaboration across many assignments. And so I think that's really where I see the opportunity is to make, to first encourage the building of those durable skills in the classroom, and make sure that assessment are actually, evaluating this and not just knowledge. But also make it much more hands-on and much more creative. And maybe I'll just quote one little book that I read recently from Rebecca Winthrop on the disengaged teen. And she classified students in different category: passenger, resistor, achiever, and explorer. And she was really saying, students kind of are born curious, but the education system has not always done a great job of keeping that curiosity up, right? Because we ask them to memorize and all of that. But if you can really start connecting what they learn in the classroom to real world problems, if you can, make it more engaging, more interactive, more fun, more personal, I think I'm excited to see like the next generation to really be like problem solver, right? To be explorer. And I think it can make the class much more engaging and for everyone.
Yeah. Now, let's dig into one more complicated topic. So far, we talked about creativity, we talked about learning, we talked about enabling students, we talked about enabling teachers. We touched on misinformation, and that Google is actually extremely well positioned to weed that out. Let's talk about bias. Just as an example, so in my classes, I normally have teaching assistants who sit there and count how often somebody says something useful. Well, I always have students who kind of like raise their hand all the time. So it's not how often you talk, but how useful it is. And I have a special code between my teaching assistants myself is if I really like I do something like a knowledge graph with my students, kind of like if I talk back and like mention like Maureen said, Maureen's point, Maureen like you saw what Maureen said, right? If I do this, then this has been a very good comment and gets more points. So my teaching assistant summarize those. Now I do record my classes, so like I made now a test and kind of said like, can AI replace my teaching assistant? And can they do the same thing? Now the problem is I'm German and my accent doesn't jive well with certain names. Moreover, the model is trained on Anglo-Saxon accents, and they don't know all the like non-English names. So essentially, my model worked perfectly for Joe and Susan and all the typical names, and if you were non-Anglo-Saxon with the name, the model didn't recognize you, creating a huge bias. I wrote about this in Forbes, kind of like a nice study showing how easy bias can be introduced, right? By just something simple as naming. Now, how do you there is a question Connie actually asked about it, and she's like, look, African American parents, if like should they train their kids with those tools? Can we, is there a right balance? Is this built for all different areas of society, or like all different groups of society? And yeah, like what's your view? You talked about red teaming. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a super important priority for Google and something we invest a lot into. I mean, Google is a global company, and we know people with a lot of different culture come to us, and so we want to make sure the tools we provide are suited for everyone and don't have any bias. And so the first thing we are really doing is try to train on a more global set of data, right? Those models are as good as what the data they train on, and so we've definitely been investing in bringing more global range of sources, and really make sure that a model can understand the different cultural contexts and identities, and so that's a continuous work we are doing to improve the data sets and make sure that is more global so that it doesn't have those bias. So that's one thing we are doing. As you just mentioned, testing and evaluation is another big one. And so whether this is for bias, for privacy, security,
Hmm.
we safety, we do have like pretty big trust and safety team that do a lot of red teaming, and really test all those models a lot, right? And they run a lot of tests. They really try to catch those bias and those safety issues, and then work with the product team to really fix the model. So I think testing and rigorous testing is super important. And so as we do that, of course, we try to bring diverse voices in, the different advisory panels and all of that, to make sure that we can catch this as much as possible. And then I would say, in the context of the classroom, teachers are again a good safeguard, right? I would definitely encourage teachers to look at those tools and to use the judgment to make sure that, when they assign project that involves AIs, to make sure that they don't see any bias as well.
And I think, like, just to be clear, like, bias is part of the structure how we build machine learning. Meaning the same discussion we had on struggle, and that it's amazing that we can now build an adaptive model. If struggle correlates, and I make this up, I'm not saying it does, but if struggle were to correlate with social economic status, for example, that you have less or more learning opportunity when you struggle or not, then the model would adapt to it. But that would actually mean that the model starts to bias towards one group in one way or the other. And while we are very appreciative of that, we have to be very careful how the downside is. So it's a very complicated thing to address. And for me, it's good that we have large companies who have a lot of data and see a lot of behaviors addressing this. Let me end with one final question. Um, Educators, parents, and executive leaders are watching this show. Now, what would you think they should do actually tomorrow on Thursday morning if they want to get their own kids better set up in this journey, which we call AI?
I mean, first, they should start playing with AI themselves. I think everybody has some opportunity to use it. And the more you use it, the more you learn. And so think of something that where you could get some little help, right? Whether this is planning your next trip or your 4th of July weekend, helping you cook, by looking at what's in the kitchen, in the refrigerator, optimizing your to-dos. I think play with those tools, because I think if parents and educators play with those tools, they will be best equipped to help the students. And the reality is the students are already using those tools. There's a lot of stats that shows that a majority of students are using those tools. And so I would just encourage parents and teachers to use them. Leverage, like for teacher, you leverage the great community of teachers that have already used the tools and can share the learnings. And for parents, talk to your kids on how they are using it. But I think, yeah, and encourage them to think about what we discussed in terms of sequencing, evaluating the outputs, understanding the pitfalls of AI, and then so that they're best equipped to use them. But then also encourage them to think of how they can use it as an enhancement of what they can do, and really bring the learning and the curiosity to the next level.
Totally. And I think that's a very, very nice encouragement, because our kids are probably way faster in using ChatGPT than we are. They have less barrier to enter. Now, one of the things which it's not only using Gemini with a prompt or ChatGPT with a prompt, it is as well building workflows that help you do things. So, for example, if you connect to me at LinkedIn, then an agent will like initially answer, because I screen like I have 17,000 people on LinkedIn following me, right? So I don't want to get salespeople, and my agents are checking for this. Now, I recently got connected from somebody on LinkedIn who did not write to me a nice LinkedIn comment. No, he wrote to me a prompt that he wanted to have so that it connects automatically to me on LinkedIn. It was so funny. I posted on LinkedIn about it. 47,000 people liked it. It was like viewed it. It was very much fun, because that person didn't understand that there's a difference between a prompt and actually putting it in. So my high recommendation to all of you is, in order to get our kids set up for the AI time, start first by yourself. I very much agree with Maureen. Now, if you want to learn more about workflows, AI workflows, then like again, there is a link below. Check it out. Come to one of the Cornell sessions where we talk about how to vibe code your own workflows, from social posting over like doing your emails and so on and so forth. With that, I wish you guys a lot of success in your own AI journey. And thank you, Maureen, for all your help and for that discussion. I could go on forever, but we had time. Learned a lot
Thank
about
you.
how to help teachers, a lot about how to create productivity and creativity from our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the really fun discussion. Bye.